This video is about world building in Altspace. It's an update to a video that I did over a year ago, right after I started playing around with Altspace. I did the video because I wanted to learn how to build worlds, and that's usually my best way of teaching myself something is I'll make a video of it or teach a class on it because I've got to know it if I'm going to do that. So that's what I did. In my first video, I had like 4 worlds in Altspace, and over the past year, I've been averaging about a world every week that I've built with Unity and uploaded it to Altspace. It's been tremendously popular in our school, and we've found a wide number of applications that we can do to in Altspace, building worlds. So I thought it was time to update this video because Altspace has changed and I've learned an awful lot about world building over the past year. There's some stuff that I got just plain wrong, and there's a lot of stuff that has been changed or updated over the past year. So this video is going to be more up to date and have a lot more of that more relevant information and probably more accurate information. We're going to be looking at the Altspace world building system. How does Altspace handle its worlds and how are they put together? The tools that Altspace gives us to build worlds. You can actually do a lot of tremendous world building without using any external tools. There's enough inside of Altspace and there's enough material available inside of Altspace that you can do everything you need right inside the headset without ever touching Unity or 3D models or any of that other stuff. Speaking of Unity, we're going to be talking about using the Unity game engine and the Unity game engine editor to build content, custom content for your Altspace worlds, whether that's a kit or a template. The basic core of Altspace world building involves the relationship between templates and kits. Templates are the thing that the world is built on. It's the basis of the world. It's also immutable and unchanging. If I want to make a change to a template that I've created, I have to go all the way back to Unity and re-upload that template because once it gets into Altspace, there's no way to change a template in any meaningful way. Objects are the things that I put on top of the template. Those are the things that may need to move, or I may or may not want them there, or I may need to change them out for different occasions. Those are the objects. So the metaphor that I've come up with is that it's like a pizza. The template is the crust and arguably the sauce as well. I'm often debating with myself is it's the sauce part of the template or is it just the crust? And I kind of think it's the crust and the sauce are part of the template because they're difficult to change. Objects are the toppings. You can put whatever you want in there and you can mix and match. And if you're the kind that likes pineapple and bacon on your pizza, you can have pineapple and bacon on your pizza. Personally, I like barbecue chicken, but that's, it's neither here nor there. But the objects can be moved around fairly easily after I've got the template built. If I don't like where the pepperoni is, I can move the pepperoni around. If I want extra olives, I can have extra olives. And I don't have to change the crust or the sauce that the pizza is built upon. However, if after I've got my world built and I've got all my toppings on my pizza and I'm ready to put it in the oven, if I decide that I want to go with a thin crust over a thick crust, I've got a lot of work to do because I have to go all the way back to the template. And that's going to involve changing things in Unity and re-uploading. So let's start looking at the Altspace Worldbuilding Tools. This is Altspace. I'm using the 2D client. This is a world that I created for an event that's going on this summer. And I can see I've got my Altspace control panel down here, my main menu, and I've got my host tools because I'm a host in this space. But I don't see a whole lot else. To start doing anything with worlds or world buildings, I have to open up my main menu, go to settings, and then there's this line here that says enable worlds beta. Turn that on, and as soon as I turn that on, I get this new tab down here that allows me to explore popular worlds or see my worlds. But as soon as I enable that, then I get this world editor icon down here that brings up this world editor panel. and I can go ahead and start building worlds. And this works in your home space. So everybody has a home space. If you enable Worlds Beta, you could just start playing around with the tools right there in your world space, decorating it and moving things around, doing whatever. You don't have to create a world to do that right off the bat, but you're going to be wanting to create a world very quickly. So now you're wanting to build a world in Altspace. You start by going to altvr.com, and there's a link at the top for worlds. If you've entered into the world's beta, you'll see a link for my worlds, and there's a drop down here for even more things. So I can go to worlds, or I can upload kits, models, whatever. There's all sorts of stuff that I can upload. Uploading things to AltVR is how I make them available to me in the Altspace environment itself. So I have to, if I'm going to create a world, I have to create the template, and then I have to create the world, and all of that is done through the web space. So I have to go to the web page to actually create the containers for these worlds and templates and objects to go in. So we start by going to My Worlds, and then all of your worlds are contained within a universe. If I look inside, say, the Worlds of Karn, this is a page that a year ago had 4 worlds on it. I can come over here to Create World, click on Create World, and then I give it a name. Give it a description. It can be as long as you want. The image is, what do I want the banner image of the world to look like? If it's private, then only people that I allow on a certain list can enter into it. If it's unlisted, then anybody can get into it, but it doesn't show up in the popular lists of worlds. So it's sort of private. People won't know you're in it, but people can, if you give them a link to your world or give them that 6-digit code, they'll be able to get into it. Default contextual roles are the things that I want everybody to be able to do. So if I've got, say, like a big open space and I want people to have the megaphone, then I can turn on megaphone only. If it's a really big open space and I want them to be able to fly around and have the megaphone, I can give them megaphone only, or pilot and pilot, or I can just give them pilot and have them be able to fly if I don't want them to have the megaphone. It all depends on what I want individual people to do. Once I create the world, I can go in and I can give individual users specific rights like terraformer or pilot or whatever, but I can't do that just yet. Over here I have a list of templates that I can choose from. If it's a template that I've created, it can be, it'll say owner up here in the corner, or if it's a template that you've created. But if it's one of the stock templates that comes with Altspace, it just looks like one of these. And there's a lot of these to choose from. Maybe for your event, maybe you just need one of these, like this board meeting room will work just fine as your template, and then you can add add your own objects to it. So once you selected a template, which is really the most important thing, is selecting the template. This cool sky is a good one to start with too. It's just an empty, cold, blue void that is really light, very performant, and it's great if my entire world is built out of kit objects, which is completely possible. You can completely build the entire world out of nothing but objects with just a very blank template. If you're the kind of person that likes their pizza just a pile of toppings on a plate without any crust, I guess, to keep that analogy going. So once I've got my template selected, I hit Create World, and the world shows up. And I can go into the world and start editing it and start adding objects to it, do whatever I want to with it. But that's the first step in creating a world, is going to the web page, selecting a template, giving it a name, and creating it. Now it's there. I'm the owner, and I can go in and do whatever I want to with it. So here we are in the headset in my home space. I've got my world editor panel over here, And inside of that, I have the editor panel that I can bring up. I can toggle edit mode. I can toggle the environment on and off if I just want to look at the objects that are available. I can turn on flight and environment clipping. Let's start at the bottom with this list with the editor panel, which is how we'll do most of the object creation in Altspace. We have different categories of objects that we can bring in, things that we can affect. We have skyboxes that we can use to change the environment around us. Or we have kits of different types of objects that we can bring in. We have SDK apps that we could bring in. That's a completely different discussion. Basics is just some simple basic items that might be useful in pretty much any world. If I want to control where people enter the world, I can use a spawn point. If I want to put a label up or a teleporter to another world, whatever, those are in basics. What we're really going to be worried about today, right now, the purpose of this video is looking at these kits and the objects in the kits. Now we've got three different groups. We have some kits that are provided by Altspace, and they're good. They're very useful. And then if you've uploaded any kits, they'll be in here. And if I have featured kits, are kits that have been produced by the community that Altspace has vetted and approved them and made them available here. And there are many pages of kits. Each of these kits has a wide variety of useful objects in it. All the way from complete buildings, different settings, summarize, Viking trees, special effects, spaceships, sounds, environments, rain, snow. There's all sorts of stuff in here. You can also get kits by sharing them with other people. Or you can get somebody who's built a kit to share it with you, and then it'll show up in here. To create an object out of a kit, I select the kit, and then I look and I see which object would I want to bring in. And I click on that, and the object loads, and I see a preview of it right here. I'll turn that off so I can explain what it is later. So here is a 3D object of a skull that I created. And I can select the object by pulling the trigger. We'll select the object, and it'll do a few different things. It'll highlight it blue in the list of world objects. It'll put this little wireframe cage around it, and I can grab it with the grip button and move it around. The wireframe around the object has these little, I call them grips. There may be these little attachments. There may be another name for them. But I can use them to affect only one of the transforms at a time of the object. You know, a transform is an object's position, rotation, orientation, and I can modify all of those. If I just grab it someplace on its surface, see as my hand moves, the object moves, and I can move it up and down, and I can rotate it. Now, one thing is useful if I have some precision work that I have to do. I can click this rotation lock button, and then the object will only rotate if I grab one of these grips in the corner and rotate it around. And now it will not freely rotate if I just move it. I'm only moving it now. The little balls on the side, I can grip those to scale it up or down. And I can use these tools to give me some precision in putting objects together. The skeleton's going to be huge. So I can put the spine in here. I think that goes the other way. That goes like that. This is from a kit of educational biology objects that I put together. See, now I've got an interesting situation here, because the bounding box for that spine is so big I can't select my skull anymore. But actually I can. Once I get the objects where I want them to be, I can lock them into place, and then I'll still be able to select them, but I won't be able to modify them. I can't grab them or move them in any way. And this is useful for preventing any kind of accidental manipulation. I've also got some positional controls down here. Let's say I've got something that I know I've got it located where I want, say along the x-axis or the y-axis or the z-axis. I can unlock these so I can move them again. I can constrain the motion to only one of these axes. And that could be the world axis, which is, it's the world, right? So it's left or right in the world, and it doesn't matter what the local axis of the objects are. Or I can use the object's local axis to constrain it along different directions. Once again, this allows for more precise placement of these objects as I put them together in my scene. Even though I have closed the editor panel, so the editor panel doesn't have to be up, if edit mode is on, I can still grab these objects and manipulate them and move them into place. Although my constraints still persist. And then finally, environment clipping in flight allows me to clip through the environment. So I can fly outside the model and I can fly through solid objects and see how the whole thing is put together, look at things from a different perspective. And from a world building point of view, this is a critical tool, because there's things that you may want to fix that nobody else will ever see because it's way out here in the middle of nowhere. But I can have something out here that affects the performance of my world, so I want to be able to get out here and get to it, or at least see it. One other thing I should mention is this little gear icon that I see on all of the objects. I can click on one of these objects to select it in my scene, and then if I click at this gear icon, I get detailed information about it. I get its exact location in the world in X, Y, and Z coordinates. I get its rotation, and I can do things like precisely align things. If I want it to be exactly aligned with the world, I can give it overrides to those values, and it'll lock it to those positions. I can modify the scale of the object. I can modify its position. So I can see right now the scale of this object in the world is 1.8 and some change, which is approximately twice the size that I originally designed it to be. And there's probably a similar scale for these other objects because it has arbitrarily placed them. But if I want to be precise about it, I have to use this panel here to precisely position my objects, or align my objects, or scale my objects. This is really a process that's easier done with the 2D client. I just figured I'd show it to you while I was here, because there's one other thing that you can do with it. I can make an object spawner, and then when I go to confirm, go back into the gear settings, now I see that I have a a different scale. I have a scale for the object as I see it in the world, and then I have an interactable object scale. That's going to be the scale of the object when it comes into my hand. And I mean, yes, when it comes into my hand. Because now I can grab it. It's interactable. I can throw it. And after it leaves the world, or 30 seconds, it'll respawn. Boom. And I can grab it. And this is how you can make like interactable food or drinks or objects that I can play with. We're using it in some of our classes to make anatomy models that students can pick up and examine very closely. It's really good for that. But we're here to talk about world building with Unity. One of the biggest changes in the updates of Altspace over the past year has been the migration to a new version of Unity, which completely changed the way a lot of the information is stored in an Altspace world. It involves asset bundles and a bunch of stuff that you really don't need to know about, except that it changed some of what the previous video covered and talked about. So you want to get the right version of Unity, which is Unity 2019.4. Now, there's several flavors of 2019.4, and as far as I know, it doesn't really matter. However, I would recommend 2019.4.2 and make sure that you get the LTS. This is for a number of reasons. LTS stands for long-term support. And that means that this is a version of Unity that Unity itself will continue to support for a long time. It's been identified as robust and stable, and it's sort of the version of 2019.4.2. You will also need some modules installed. So you can click on Add Modules up there after you get it installed, or you can do this while you download it. You want to make sure that you have Android build support, and you want to make sure that you have Mac build support as well. Once you have those modules installed, and don't worry if you're missing a module that the uploader needs to build either the template or the kit, it will fail and you'll get an error message saying that you're missing the module. You come back here and this is where you fix that problem. Because if you don't have it installed, when you go to add modules, you can add those modules and fix that problem. Then we're going to start with projects, and we're going to start with a blank project. So I'm going to go over here to new, and I want to make sure that I'm doing with the right version of Unity if you have half dozen installed like me. And what you're going to want to do is just regular 3D. You don't want the universal render pipeline because none of that works. You don't want the high definition RP, or you won't need the extras. And 2D, well, obviously, since it's a VR application, 2D is kind of out of the question. Anyway. Give it a project name and create, and wait for this thing to happen. So here's our Unity scene open. Our project folder is completely empty. Our default scene is completely empty except for the main camera and the directional light, and that's fine. The first thing that we're going to want to do is install the Unity uploader itself. So go to Assets, Import Package, Custom Package, because the uploader is in a asset package. Now, where can you get the uploader? That's a good question. Where can you get the uploader? I get the uploader from there's a world building documentation for the Altspace. There's the official Altspace Discord. There's a direct link to it in this web page. I will post a link to the latest uploader in the description of this video. So it'll be right under this video. It'll be a good place to find it. But you download the uploader. It's an asset package. The the most recent one, and this is something that changes a couple of times. It's changed. They've updated this a couple of times. 0.8.8, and import that into your project. There's a couple of different uploaders out there. In the community, there's another version of the uploader that doesn't have some of the issues that the Altspace uploader has that I'm going to be talking about. But I'm just going to cover the Altspace uploader. The other one is very good, works very well. So I've got a new menu up here, AltspaceVR. Click on Build Settings, and it brings up this panel. And I usually just take it and dock it somewhere because I use it. I'm going to need it a lot, so I might as well just stick it there. You can log into it with you want. So here I am, signed in. I can click in, load your templates, and it will bring down a list of all my templates. But as of right now, I don't have anything in this project that I can really build anything with. I've just set up this environment. But now Unity is ready to either build or build directly and upload into my Altspace account. And that's great. So now I'm going to get some assets to work with. And here's the asset I'm going to be using. It's the same one that I used for my my video from last year, Medieval Town Exteriors by Lilac Games. It's a great little free asset package. Very light, 25 megabyte download. And one thing to watch out for when you first download it, there's going to be a folder called Standard that has another asset package in it, and another one called URP that has another asset package in it. What they've done since last year is they've put two different versions of the same assets sort of bundled together in one. So I've got one that uses standard materials, and I've got another one that uses materials written for the universal render pipeline. You want to make sure you do not use this one. Open the one that's in standard, and that will install you'll have a bunch of folders in here with materials and meshes and prefabs and stuff with it. So that's one thing to make sure of. Then the next thing we want to do is look in this prefabs folder, and this is where they've got all of their FBX files. So I'm going to drag this over a little bit so we can see all of them. Not the prefabs, the meshes. Mesh is what we're looking for. FBX files. So these are just the meshes. They don't have any materials or anything applied to them. This is the raw source material. And what we're going to do is we're going to select all of them and look in the inspector right over here to see that they're read-write enabled. So we want to turn that off. What that does is that allows a script to be able to modify the vertices of the mesh. If I want to, say, distort or warp or do something or count how many vertexes it's got, whatever you want to do with it, you do it with the script, and the script's able to get into the mesh and do some stuff. And you know what's not allowed in Altspace? Scripts of any kind. So, yeah, you'll never have an opportunity, you'll never have a reason to turn on read-write enabled. Then We want to generate colliders, and what this will do, Unity will go through and make a mesh collider that you can use to make it interact with physics. So even the things that I want to be able to pick up and throw around, they need to have a mesh collider on them. Things that I want to be able to stand on, teleport. I'm assuming that we would want to be able to not walk through the walls of these buildings, and also be able to teleport onto these buildings. So we're going to need mesh colliders on pretty much everything. And then this is sort of an option, generate light maps. If you plan on baking your lighting, which we're not really going to go into the lighting aspect very much in this video, but if you bake your lighting, you're going to have to generate light map UVs. Then we hit apply and wait for this little green bar to creep across this window. Fortunately, these are really light models. They don't have a very high polygon count, and the textures are a reasonable size. So it's great for building worlds, because it's very performant, it's very lightweight, and so that's done. So we can go over here to our scene, and we can start either creating objects or creating a template. So now we've got our project set up, we've got our Altspace tools installed, we've got some assets in place. Let's start building some stuff. So what I've got here is just a collection of buildings out of that Fantasy Village asset that we got off the asset store, and I've put them around this space and just put like this simple little grass texture. Everything in here comes with that asset. So all of this stuff is static. If you're going to bake the lighting, everything has to be static, and that's one of the benefits of building stuff into a template. That's where I can use baked lighting. So I've already baked the lighting on these objects, and everything in here is intended to not move once it's in place. We're just going to be talking about how do I build this now that I've got this set up. How do I build this and get it into Altspace? Also, there's only the default skybox. The skybox is something that I frequently build into my templates, because I can have a much higher quality skybox if I put it into the template than if I use one of the other skyboxes from Altspace or upload another one separately. And that's a design consideration that you would make based on a number of different things. So, building a template, when I build a template, it compiles that scene or those objects, whatever it is I'm building, into what's called a Unity asset bundle. And if you don't know what an asset bundle is, that's fine. If you do know what a Unity asset bundle is, that's even finer. Because you really don't have to touch it. You don't have to do anything to it. By default, it's going to take all of the objects in my template. Now, this stuff is just for templates. It's going to take all this stuff in my scene, and it's going to put it onto a layer called nav mesh. It's a new layer. It's layer 14, actually. So you can, and it really doesn't matter what that layer is called. It's just it has to be on layer 14. It makes everything the child of a new game object called environment. So it creates a game object called environment, and then it takes everything in your scene and it makes all that stuff a child of this environment game object. It also deletes all of the cameras in your scene. One thing that they don't want having happen in Altspace is you go into a world and the world wants to use a different camera that's off to the side. Completely break everybody's experience. It's awful. So they delete all the cameras in the template. And then it converts and re-imports the entire project for every selected platform. So currently there's 3. When you build something for Altspace, you build it for Windows, you build it for Android, and you build it for Mac. And every time it switches from one of those platforms to the other, it re-imports everything in the project. So if your project is really big, if you have a bunch of assets in your project that you don't use, you're slowing down your build time. So it's really a good idea to keep your projects as lean as possible. Switching back over to Unity, this thing is ready to build. So I come over here to my AltsVR build settings. I'm going to be building a template. So here's my list of templates. Now I've really got two different options that I can take here. I can build, just build, or I can build and upload. First thing I have to do is create a new template. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. You click on the Create New Template button, and it brings you over to this web page, which is your templates web page on altvr.com. You can also get to it through this little drop down here. Boom, go down to templates. And you click on the Create button, and then we'll call this Demo Village Template. You can choose a background image for this if you want, or leave it this default one. If you put a background image on the template, that image will be used by the world by default. You can have different images on the template and on the world. It's kind of up to you. And then create template. So I've created the template, but there's nothing in it, right? I've really, at this point, just sort of have a placeholder for the template. I've created a template ID, which is some place where I can put the template once I have it created. Now that I've done that, both of these options become available to me. I'm going to reload my templates. So I see my demo village, selected template demo village. And now if I click build and upload, it will attempt to build for all three of these platforms and then upload that template. And I say attempt. So looking at these two options just for a moment a little closely. If I build, then it's going to create a local zip. It'll put that template into a local zip file, whatever I name it. And then I have to go to altvr.com to upload that template, that kit. And then I have that kit saved. I have that, not that kit, I've been saying kit. That I have the template, the zip that the template's in. I have that saved for archive purposes. And I like having those. I like having older versions of things because sometimes I make some radical changes and they don't work and I need to go back, right? Revision control. So it's sort of an ad hoc revision control. If you were really serious about it, you would use an actual revision control system like GitHub and just archive your templates, these zip files, when you get done with them. And I don't have to log into the AltsVR uploader to use this build option. I can just skip that and go straight to build, and I don't have to worry about putting my credentials into the tool in Unity. Now the build and upload option, it still creates that local zip, but you don't hang on to it for very long because the upload is handled by scripts, and once the upload is done, it deletes the template. This also does not support Mac. It doesn't support Mac either in developing on a Mac or uploading for Mac. This is a piece of data that is likely to change, right? So if anything goes stale first on this video, it's going to be this bit right here. Currently, the uploader doesn't work for the Mac, so it crashes when you try to do a build and upload for the Mac platform, and it also requires you to log in. So having the archive of the templates, not having to log in, and being able to work well for all three platforms is the reason I almost exclusively use the build method, and that's the method we're going to be looking at in this video. So I'm going to click build, and I will give it a home, and template.zip is just fine. Click save, and now it's going to go through this process where it builds this scene, only this scene, for each of the platforms. But between each of these builds, it's going to have to re-import the entire project. And we're done. And here's my template.zip. It's really small. Um, the size of this is probably going to be 3 times the size you expect it to be. It'll certainly be about 3 times the size that the diagnostics on the AltsVR website report, because inside of this is all 3 versions. There's a version for Mac, a version for Windows, a version for Android. Let's take a look real quick at the changes that it made in the scene to me. So there's my environment game object that the uploader created, and all of the items that were in the scene are now children of that environment game object. And notice that they're all on layer nav mesh, which is layer 14. And I didn't have to create that layer, the uploader created that layer. And the camera has also been deleted from my scene. So what I do with this now, I go to altvr.com to the template. I go to edit, and then I choose the zip file, and specify the version of Unity that I build it with, and then click update. I wait for it to upload. I wait for it to tell me that it's successfully updated. If it's going to fail, it would have failed like right at that point. And the error message that I would have got says that scripts are not allowed in templates, dummy, or something to that effect. I don't think they actually call you a dummy. But if there are scripts that make it into your template through some prefab or some asset or something, then this is a point where it would fail, and it would let you know that. In Unity, if you have any kind of errors, they show up in the console. And the only error that I've gotten so far is this one that I can safely ignore. So my template is uploaded. Now I can go to Worlds, go to My Worlds, go to this demo world that I created earlier in the video, go to Edit, here's my demo village template. And it's really a good idea to change that image on the template because it makes it easier to find when this list gets kind of long. So my demo village template has been selected. I can click update, and now I've updated my world. And I'm just going to hop in on the 2D client to check it out. And here we are. Clearly it doesn't look like parts of this model were intended to be looked at from below ground, but those are pretty easy to fix, I think. Here's my template. It really doesn't have anything in it. aside from this stuff. So maybe it's time to maybe work on a kit of some objects to decorate this place with. For making this kit, I've created a new scene just for this. It's entirely optional. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense to build the kits in the same scene that the template is in. At least from my experience, it gives me an opportunity to see how well the objects work with the template as I'm. But that also is a design consideration. There's other reasons that just putting it in an empty scene makes things simpler logistically as you're building this. And I have pretty much all of the objects from that asset that we downloaded, which are not buildings. So it's pieces of fence and lamps and rocks, and there's some mushrooms in here, a couple of sacks, signs, that sort of stuff. And they're all located at the origin, and they're all just on top of each other, and that's fine. You don't need them to make any sort of relational sense yet in this environment. We're just building the kit is really all that we're doing. So we go to Altspace VR build settings. We go over here to the kit tab, and now we have to give it a kit folder name. Now the kit folder name is something that we get from altvr.com. So just like with the template in the world, the whole process starts with creating the identifier on AltspaceVR, altvr.com, for the kit to sort of be uploaded to. So I go over to altvr.com, pull down this drop down, go to kits, my kits. Here's a list of my kits. I go to create a new kit. Call it my 2021 demo kit. Just as a matter of convention for my own purposes, when I'm naming kits and kit objects, I use underscores instead of spaces, and all of my names are lowercase. And I can give it an image file if I want to. This would be a good place to do that. And then I create the kit. And just like when I created the template, it was empty when I created it. It's just the ID. And this is the thing that we really need right here. So you're going to want to copy that number because you're going to be using it often in this process. So our kit folder name is that long number followed by the name on the kit. What did I call this kit? 2021 demo kit. Good name for it. 2021 demo kit. All right. Now we go through this process where we add objects to our kit, and that's done by converting game objects to kit prefabs. So we can do these in groups. So everything in here, I've got card A, and what it doesn't really matter what these things are named. What's important is the name that I put into it right here. So we've got two carts in this. So every asset in that kit also has to start with that kit identifier. So I already had that copied to the clipboard, so I pasted it again. And then we'll call these cart. And they'll show up. I've got two of them, so they'll show up as cart 1 and cart 2 in the kit when I actually get it into Altspace. So I select those two objects in the hierarchy, go to convert game objects to kit objects. It tells me kit objects are created. And now that I look over here under this prefabs folder, and this prefabs is one of the folders that was created by the Altspace uploader when you imported it. So you don't actually have to create this. Inside of this is also a test folder that they give you if you just want to test creating some some objects. So it moved those two objects, and you notice that the prefabs under this folder now have that long ID in front of the name, and then it's named cart 01, and then there's cart 00. So I said 1 and 2. So it starts counting at 0. And notice that those two carts are now missing from my hierarchy. We do the same thing with fence. This time there's 3 fences. All I have to do is change the name cart to fence, convert objects to Kit Prefab, and now I've got 3 pieces of fence in there, and the fence is missing from that. So I'm going to go through this. I'm going to go through this list group by group and convert these into game objects or into prefabs based on what type they are. So I'll have a group of mushrooms, a group of signs, and then a few individual things: bucket, barrel, whatever. Okay, so we've got all of our objects have been converted into prefabs with the kit ID at the beginning of it, and it also creates screenshots. So these are the previews that are going to appear in the editor. They're also generated by the uploader when I do that convert. Well, what's important about these is I now no longer want to work with these other prefabs that originally came with the assets. If I'm going to make any changes to these, I want to work with these prefabs down here. I can always open one of these up. Oh, that was a screenshot. I can always open one of these up and take a look at it. Now, these are really simple models. This is really only something I would worry about if I had kit objects where the objects themselves are made up of multiple models. And I've had stuff like that in the past where I'll have to make changes, iterative changes to these kits as they're being developed. And I want to make those changes to the prefabs in this folder. Don't delete these, don't replace these, don't recreate these, especially after the first time I get the kit uploaded. If I get the kit uploaded to Altspace and I do some testing in Altspace and I need to make changes, I don't want to mess with these. I can open them up and I can edit them, and I can add to them. But if I start doing stuff like replacing them, like if I put another object in here, if I've uploaded my kit, I put another object in here with the exact same name. It's got the same ID name, the same prefix, suffix, everything. That's going to make for some instability in your kit when you get it into Altspace. You'll notice things like all of your objects have the kit ID visible in the editor, and it makes it very hard to work with. And that's what happens if I go through this process again and I make these changes to these objects and then I reconvert them back into kit prefab objects. When I re-upload that kit, things are going to be broken. So just at that point, just don't mess with it. Okay. Now we go over here to the kit section. We have created our kit on Altspace. Now I can load my kit prefabs directory, which is a little bit of a different process. Instead of loading my templates off of Altspace, I'm loading the prefab directories out of my project. So I see I've got options to build my demo kit. And we're done. That was considerably faster than building the template. And just like with the template, I have Android, Mac, and Windows asset bundles in my kit. Very much like the template, I go to my kit, I go to edit, choose my zip file, tell it the version of Unity that I built it with, and then update. And my kit was successfully updated. Now if I look at it, I see that I have all three platforms. They're about less than a meg in size, so this is a nice tight kit. I can look at the list of artifacts, and I can see the objects that are in my kit. So here we are in Altspace, and I've got my template around me. We're in it. We can check it out and look around, and I've got my kit loaded, so I can bring up my editor panel, click on mine, go to kits, pick an object, place it, scale it. There it is. So put a barrel in here, maybe put a sign. Put a sign on the building over there. Letting everybody know that that is a blacksmith. That's not bad. And going through this process is how you would decorate this scene. So there's a lot more to be said about world building. A lot more. It's a deep subject, and there's so many different rabbit holes, and so many things we didn't even talk about in this video. One last thing that I do want to mention, though, especially if you're really serious about building worlds for events, and you want those events to be featured or become main events and really attract a lot of attention, then you have to pay attention to the diagnostics on the web page. If I go to any world, like the demo world that we just created for this video, I'll see a link there called Diagnostics, and I can click on that, and it'll show me this menu here. The number of objects in the scene, the number of kits in the scene, the size of the templates, whether or not it's got Mac support, whether or not it's built with 2019.4, all sorts of stuff. And these flags over here either have green checks, yellow flags, or red exclamation points to tell you if it's gone outside of this acceptable limit that Altspace has sort of defined. So if you want your world to be featured, you have to have, all green or at least very few yellow. Like we look at Ghostbusters here. Here's the diagnostics for Ghostbusters, and it was one of the first worlds I did. I did it over a year ago, so a lot of stuff have changed. I'm kind of heavy on the kits. I blame that on Brex. The template is considerably bigger than it needs to be. 10 megabytes is what you get for a green flag. I can get up to 20 with a yellow exclamation point. Anything over that, I get that nice red X. So they're not going to want to feature this world because it's just too heavy. I also need to update it to the proper version of Unity, so it was completely done on a different version of Unity, and the Mac assets are missing, so I need to rebuild it for Mac. That's just something and even after a year, there's 2 people in it. Wow. If I look at House of Karn, I've got a similar situation. My template is really big in House of Karn. I've got no kits in it. It's everything's in the template with this one. Everything is in the template. Of course, the template is missing the Mac assets, so I should probably update that as too. I've got a bunch of worlds I need to go back through and update. Anyway, we have reached the end of this video. If you've watched this long, it's it's a long video. There's a lot of information in it, though. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it helpful, and I'll be seeing you in Altspace.